Hello and welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for my content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like, because the purpose of this channel is educational in regards to atheist and deconversion issues and any issues related to those issues. A hearty shout out to the Rabyd Nation. Join the nation by hitting that subscribe button, and if you want to be a supporter of the channel in a more tangible way, hit the join button and your options for citizenship shall be presented to you. Today I want to continue on in my series on the arguments, the case against God's existence. I have to, once again, after last week's video, part 9, which has 130 some comments on it, I have to kind of reiterate some things about this whole series. Number one, I'm not necessarily saying that I hold these arguments or making these arguments myself. I am restating the arguments as presented by some and then evaluating them to see if they have any validity, to see how strong of an argument that they are against the existence of God. Even as an atheist, I can do that. My quest has always been, through this entire series, can I actually move from being an agnostic atheist to a Gnostic atheist, where I can say and make the claim there is no God? I'm examining the claims of people that say that there is no God and are Gnostic atheists, but I am not one. A lot of people have commented on this series, particularly last week's part 9, about your argument doesn't do this, and it's not my argument. Okay, I'm just examining the argument that has existed for a while, made by others, made by other, atheist philosophers, made by other atheists, okay, and evaluating for them for my own purposes. So what it usually tells me when I see comments like this, some of you just aren't listening to the end of the video, or you're not paying attention to my own evaluation of whether or not I think the argument is valid or not. Okay, so I want to get that out again. I'm probably going to have to state that again every part of this series now, because the one thing that has become crystal clear when theists comment on this particular series is they think I'm holding these views. No, I've never made, I'm not the original guy that made all these arguments. I'm just laying them out. If you want to, and I'm just being a summary of the argument too, because I'm just trying to evaluate them for myself, okay? There will probably come a time where I will go through this all again, because Thursdays is about the whole argument case for and against God, okay? That's what Thursdays is. This is an atheist channel, okay? It's what I do on Thursdays, okay? And I will come back to these, and I will probably state these arguments a lot more better, just do it, in a better way, and see if they still hold water. This is something I've never done before, okay, and so I'm doing that to do this now. I hate to waste 2 minutes of our time as I look at the clock and realize I've wasted up everybody 2 minutes to explain this every time. But the more I listen to theist comments on every part of this series, the more I think it's necessary to state this up front for their benefit. Sorry for the rest of you. All right, getting into the cosmological counter arguments, which is this part, okay. The people that make this argument are basically looking at the cosmological argument and saying, well, your argument kind of opens the door for me to lay some criticism on whether God exists then. Because if you're going to sit there and say, for instance, that something cannot exist without creators, why can't we apply this to God, or your concept of God as well? And what this does is it, number one, either sets up an infinite regress for theists. Well, some God created that God. Well, who created that God? And on it goes. Okay, there's definitely some hand-holding here with the counter-design arguments. But what ends up having to happen here is what they're saying is, well, then you set up an infinite regress of gods that goes back and back and back and never stops. A lot of theists make an argument like against the multiverse, or against, the universe, expanding and contracting and having always existed, as saying that that's an infinite regress and that's impossible. Well, you kind of do it to yourself here too. Now, what usually theists do to get out of this problem is they say, well, there's got to be an unmade God that has always existed. Well, then the counter arguments go, well, then you're engaged in special pleading on this God. On what basis do you say that there's a God that's always existed? So does the cosmological argument actually prove the existence of God? I don't think it does for that reason. For these two reasons, I think that the cosmological argument has some fatal flaws and why it doesn't work for me personally. In fact, these two reasons do that. But does this prove the non-existence of God? I don't know, not necessarily. There's also another argument against the cosmological argument that says, why can't the universe create a God? Okay, some polytheistic systems kind of say you have the universe that's chaos, this force of, like the Norse mythos has this, forces of heat and light and cold. Given the fact that the Norse mythology gets developed in a place where there's 4 seasons and winter and stuff, it kind of makes sense that they would create that idea. And then out of this come the giants, and then out of the giants come the gods, and so on and so forth. The same is true for like the Greek mythologies. You have, these forces of, cosmic forces clashing, and, the big gods like Kronos. Time and matter get created, and out of Kronos, comes the 3 brothers, Zeus and Poseidon and Hades, and then, they have, when Kronos is defeated and destroyed, then these 3 gods divvy up the land, that he used to control, so Zeus gets Olympus, Poseidon gets the sea, and Hades, being the unlucky one, gets the underworld. So when we have, those are kind of systems that do that, where you have the universe kind of creating God and have an infinite regress and kind of accept it. So I don't know if it's getting a little bit ahead of myself, but, there are some creative systems of gods that don't necessarily walk away from those infinite regress things or special pleading or anything like that. I think the questions are valid. It points to a lot of assumptions that the cosmological argument makes, and it makes a good contra-argument to the cosmological argument, but I don't know that it actually gets rid of God. It points out a weakness in the theist position that is very damning to the argument for cosmology. God is a necessary start for cosmology. And I think it also kind of attacks the idea of the deist God, too, because the deist God may be a God doesn't give a shit about humanity, but he will, create the universe, wind it up, and let it go. And this kind of attacks that idea too. I think, at this point you're going to have to either pull out your design arguments, and I've already done a video on the contra to design arguments. The truth of the premises in both the design and cosmological arguments can be challenged along these lines. And so this makes a good contra-argument to the design and cosmological arguments. Does it get rid of God, though? I think, once again, we are running into an argument here that is very specific. So my first evaluation is this kind of specifically attacks any notion of gods or goddesses or God in general that has God as a creator, that these people, these gods or God, create the universe or create parts of the universe. It really attacks that notion of, well, why can't the force of nature create the God, or vice versa, or don't we have this infinite regress of gods, or who created God? These are all very valid questions, but it's very, very specific. We're talking about the divine elements, whether a polytheistic system or a monotheistic system, or the force that do creative acts. It attacks that notion and saying, well, chicken or egg, who created who made who, all right? And so I would say it attacks everybody. I think, though, however, it is weaker against some polytheistic systems, because some polytheistic systems don't have kind of an infinite regress or accept the notion that gods are created out of natural forces. This is pretty common in some polytheistic systems, that these natural forces, yin and yang or whatever, create the gods. Okay, that the gods are just something that evolved out of whatever. Okay, in fact, polytheism in some systems actually accept evolution for this very reason. Um, you can avoid, in some systems, you can avoid the infinite regress, or you just accept it. Okay, and say, well, who created things ultimately? And a lot of these systems will say, I don't know, which is the same answer that a materialist would give about the universe. I don't know. Okay, and so it's a fair point all the way around. So it has its limitations. These counter cosmology arguments have their limitations in disproving a God and have some of the same problems as the cosmological arguments themselves. I think they make good counterpoints to the cosmological argument that make the cosmological argument weak, or, in my opinion, just not very good at proving the existence of God either. I think what you end up with a lot of these, like the same as we had with the design counter design arguments, is you kind of nullify each other. That you kind of make both sides of this thing kind of useless, and it doesn't prove anything one way or the other, which kind of has been the point of a lot of us agnostic atheists, which is, can you really prove anything one way or the other? And the answer is probably no. Okay, so I'm continuing to do this with the assumption that maybe some of these arguments will go together or whatever, and the counter design, counter cosmological arguments do kind of go together, and so their counters on those that argue there is no God kind of go with this too. But I think once again we're running into an argument against the case against God that has a limited value, and it attacks a certain type of deity, the creator God, or the creator pantheon, is what's struck here. Okay, so, but I think it has more force against the monotheistic version than the polytheistic version that also accepts some sort of infinite regress as valid. So I don't know that this is very good against anything but that type of God. It's certainly not a silver bullet. Once again, we have this kind of argument that is has a very specific target, and tries to take out that target, and does a pretty good job of just kind of invalidating the argument from the other side for the existence of such deities, and saying, well, sorry, your argument has problems, and these are the problems. And I think that's going to be my evaluation of this one. Once again, we have a very specific thing. Thanks once again for stopping by. I appreciate every like, share, and subscribe. I hope this series has definitely generated a lot of good discussion, and I'm very pleased with that, so thank you very much. I'm not against any of you commenting theist or atheist on this series. It's just, I always have to seem to start this series out with the disclaimer of, I'm just evaluating these things. It's not that I'm making this case, and I'm only making a summary case. I'm not laying the argument out in detail. I'm just trying to evaluate them initially to see which ones I really want to look into first, when I'm really looking at the question of a little bit deeper. And so far I've only really found one that I think I really want to go into, and I really want to look at, like Occam's razor, but because I think it hits everything, every supernatural claim, do we need this? And it evolves into a very powerful tool. I just don't think it is the ultimate nuclear weapon against the existence of God either. So it's something I'm going to look into a lot further to understand better. But that's the purpose of this series. But thanks for everybody who's commented. It's been a real interesting series because of that. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of you. And once again, as always, live your best life. You only get one go around, and then it's over. So make sure you're spending your time, your money, your opportunities in building a better life for yourself, for your family, and for the world around us. And don't waste it on the trappings of religion and faith, because that's a dead end. And I speak from experience. And once again, thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.